All right. Can you guys hear me? Yeah, awesome. If you can just put in the comment if you can actually hear me or not, and I hope this goes better than last time. Cool. Thanks, Diego. All right. So let me just start my slides. Go. All right, thanks everyone for coming to this webinar. And this is about scroll interactions in Frameworks. Just in case if you are wondering what this UUFW means, it's an acronym that I just made up. And now, actually, let me show you what we are gonna build today. So this is a kind of imitation of the Apple's iPhone XR site. It's not 100% accurate, but I kind of try my best to make it kind of look the same. But the idea is that when you actually scroll, you'll see those text fade away from bottom to the top. So if you keep scrolling and you see a phone coming up from the bottom, and at some point, like there's a lot of details in this prototype actually, and you'll see that at some point it'll lock into the place and keep scaling and keep zooming out, and at this point, and there is a label that just disappeared. And if you keep scrolling, you'll see the whole thing, like on the left side, it kind of locks in the place. But on the right side of the screen, it keeps scrolling. And when I do the scrolling here, you see this text fade in one by one, right? So that makes a pretty nice, nice effect. And when you scroll to some specific point, the whole page becomes scrollable again. And when you keep scrolling, and you'll just behave like a normal page. All right, so that's this guy. But before doing that, let me show you something else actually. So everything that we are gonna do is we're gonna use the Parallax module that I wrote earlier, but I added some kind of more advanced stuff. But first, like if you can see over here, this packet, this module or package, whatever you want to call it, Parallax, right? And the first way to use it is actually without code at all. So if you install it, like let me just use this as an example. Okay, so after you install the Parallax module, you get a few components. One, like ignore this one. I don't know why it actually show up this empty connector. It does nothing. But the one that you want to use here is this Parallax Scroll, and it behaves almost the same as a standard scroll, right? And also, so that's the scroll, and you can connect it to a longer content. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention that, like, anytime if you have any questions, feel free to put into the comments. And if there's more time at the end of the webinar, and I'll try to answer them. And if not, at least I will answer by email. So just feel free to put your questions over there. Now we have a kind of normal scrolling stuff here, right? And now, say if you want something that appears in the scroll, and but it kind of scrolls differently than the rest of the page. And what we can do is to actually just grab this parallax frame. It's supposed to be called parallax layer, but I didn't want to, because there's no way to specify the label of the component in the store at this point. And I didn't want to break other people's prototypes, so I just keep the name Parallax Frame. But whenever you see this Parallax Frame or Parallax layer, they're the same thing. Let me just create something like that. It doesn't matter, the size doesn't matter. And if you connect to something over here, so now we have this blue sky and cloud here. And if you don't do any customization, it still scroll as just a normal page content. But now we have more control. So if you look at the right side of the screen, and there are a few things that you can specify. For example, I can do this pin in scroll direction. By default is false. I can do true. And if you go back, and it's actually pinned over here. Yeah, for some reason, the top, the status bar is actually. Let me just move this whole status bar before the parallax scroll, and it'll look better, right? So this piece of sky locks in its place when scrolling. And let me add something else here. Add a bird here, maybe to the right, and connect to this frame. And we got a bird here, right? And what are we gonna do it? Like right now, yeah, I think, let me just show you this. I just scroll with the page. And if you, like, the other thing that we can do here is to kind of specify its speed relative to the rest of the page. Let's say if it's, I don't know, if we want to move it to the right when scrolling, and actually, let me just do this guy. Those two numbers might look better. Let's see what's gonna happen. And so it moves horizontally because we specify its speed on the x direction. There's a bit more more advanced stuff here. Is that like you see this input by default is speed, so that way you can specify its speed on both x and y direction. But you can actually choose this position. This name is probably not super obvious, but I'll show you what it's gonna mean. Like basically, it means that for layers, it's for the layers x and y position, you can enter some kind of formula here to make it move the way that you want it, right? For example, if I do this minus s, this s stands for the speed on the scroll direction. So basically, how much. Sorry, not speed. The scroll position. So this s is basically the scroll position. And let's see what's gonna happen here if it's minus s. So just go this direction, right? And for the y, let's try something fancier. Middle school math. Guess how it's gonna move. Yeah, so I don't know why I actually kind of move up. I think I need to like to not do that. And it'll move horizontally, hopefully. Yeah. So, this is probably not super useful, but kind of fun to play with. The reason that I wanted to show this kind of thing is that originally, when I was trying to build a kind of more advanced scroll interactions, I was thinking about, we have this formula. We can actually basically specify anything that we want, like with a in a math formula, right? So we can do that like sticky label, for example. Let me show you the other. Oh, actually, so not this at this point. But my point is that originally I wanted to basically make this formula stuff super fancy, so that you can make whatever scroll interactions that you want. But later on, I realized that this is, I don't know about you, but it's actually not super easy to use. It's not super obvious, like what kind of formula that you want. For example, we want a label that stick to its position at some specific scroll range. It will be super difficult. Like, it's possible to do it this way, but it will be super difficult. And also, I'm not sure what kind of a UI, like if we want to simplify that, what kind of a UI that we can put on this properties panel. Now, that leads to my kind of decision to actually move on to use code overrides to do this scroll interactions, which turned out to be a lot easier than this funky math formula or middle school math or whatever. And I will show you next. This iPhone XR. Actually, before that, let's do something simpler. So I've got frame and scrolling content, right? So I added like this kind of checkerboard stuff so that we can easily see the scrolling of the page. Now let's add a scroll. Notice I'm actually adding a standard scroll, not that parallax scroll at all. So I'm just using the standard scroll and connecting to that one, and then we have a I think it's more scrolling page, right? Now with that, let's add something. Just a frame. Okay. And maybe this color. Okay, so it'll scroll as it should. Let's say we want to make this square, this rectangle, stick to its position when I scroll to some specific position. Like, I'll show you what you'll see what it's gonna look like very soon. So let's go to add a code override on the right side of the screen, and there's a property panel, right? So let's add a code override. Where is my Visual Studio Code? Screen a little smaller. Maybe the font bigger. All right. So now we have this skeleton file here to get rid of everything. And we're gonna want to have an export. To actually back up a little bit. So let's just try to kind of type what we want in a kind of a text form and see what are we gonna come up with. So for example, we want like the scroll position from 100 to 800. That's some hard-coded number, and we want it to, you know, I don't know, like sticky. And there's actually something called sticky, and we can I can press return to actually import it. So it's coming from this Parallax module. All right. So this is actually kind of what we wanted, right? So when I scroll the page, and when the page is scrolled to the position 100, we want this rectangle no longer go along or like scroll moving up with the page. We want it to stay its place on the page. So it's gonna be something like that, right? And it turns out that we can do it this way. So we can add some actually supporting stuff so that we Framer knows how to deal with those texts that we just put there. And there's something called scroll overrides, which happens to be something that we can import from this Parallax as well. So scroll override, it is a function, right? So it is a function that takes a number of parameters and it returns something. So it's going to be like this, right? And let me move those two things into the brackets. Now, like that, okay? That you can, from this text, you can actually see that from scroll position 100 to 800, we want it to be sticky. So it kind of makes sense, right? Of course, it's not done yet. We want this particular rectangle to be sticky, not like everything else. So we want to have a way to actually specify that. So that way is line number 6. We put this stuff inside in an array, and it's actually part of a object. And let's say we want to give a name of the rectangle that we want to keep it sticky, right? So let's call it, it can be anything. So let's just call it sticker. And now, like for this sticky, like sticky Y, this means that like this is a kind of custom behavior that we want to specify for this given scroll range. So I'll say like it's kind of OP maybe operation over here, and then again notice this sticky Y is actually a function again. Let's just call it without any parameters. That's pretty much what we need to specify this kind of scrolling interaction. And of course, to be able to kind of work with FramerX, we need some extra stuff. So we need to actually define the code override. One for the scroll. So this is override, and do that. Scroll, and it's a function, and we're going to pass along this props parameter. So this is actually a little different from like if you're used to kind of write code override for untap or other things. Normally we will put this like empty. We don't need this props, but remember for this one we are going to need this props. And the reason I will explain later if we have time. But this is the override for the scroll, and also for this particular frame, this rectangle, we need an override as well, right? And line number 10, let's just use this sticker. So we have a ID sticker here, line number 6. And then we can do so like overrides.sticker, which is a function that calls this props. That's really everything that we need. Let me save the file and go back to the canvas to actually use this code override. And for the scroll, we will assign it the scroll override, right? And for the rectangle, we will add it override as well and sticker. Now let's go back and test it. And let me scroll very slowly, and you'll see the effect of it. So when I'm scrolling, because I put a 100 to 800, right? So like initially it's not there yet, so it's just scroll normally. But as soon as I scroll, you see the background moving, so it actually sticks to its place. So this is how we can put this scroll interaction very easily. And of course, we can modify this number. And there are other things that I'm going to show you next. For example, let's say when I scroll to some point and we want to rotate this rectangle. Okay, let's say line number 10. We can specify another scrolling range, 800 to 900, for example. And let me just copy this. The ID is still sticker because that's still something that we want. Like we want to modify the behavior or the appearance of this rectangle. And for this operation, we're gonna do something else, like modulate. I've taken this name from the Framework Classic, and it has a utils modulate. So that's it works very similar, I think. And now this is a function, and we're gonna call it with like a few parameters. The first parameter that we want is because we want to rotate this rectangle, right? So we're gonna say rotation. That's basically what you can do when you make an override, and you can that's what you can put as the name of the property over there. So rotation, and we wanted to kind of map this input range to its rotation, right? Let's say it's 0 to 90. Let me save it, and let's go back and see if it works. Scroll sticky, right? Sticky there, and scroll more. Did not seem to work. Rotation. Huh. Did I make any typo or anything? Modulate, rotation. Okay, yeah, it actually worked. So it's just I didn't scroll to the place yet. And yeah, good point, Julian. Keep scrolling. Keep scrolling, and after 800, and it'll scroll, right? When you scroll back, it'll rotate back. Awesome. So that's something like this. And next, maybe let's change the color of it. We can do this line number 12. Put an array instead of like this single object here. We can do another modulate. And we can say background from, I don't know, what color? Maybe this color. Just copy this color to orange. Okay. Now, if you look at this code from 11 to 19, right? So it means for this range, we want to do two things to this sticker. We want to change its rotation and we want to change its background. And let's see it again. Okay, rotate. See, did you see the color change? It changes to orange gradually. So that's this modulate, right? Yeah, Diego, that's a good question. What parameters can we use with modulate? So it's basically, all the properties that you can use in this override. So let's say if you have, let me quickly make another one. And that's normally how we actually write this override, right? And if you press Control and Enter, Control Enter, right? If you press Control and Enter, and you're gonna get a list of things. I think I will say a majority of the things that you can put there. There are some I think there are some exceptions, and especially like I think it's one that it says animatable. Now we can put it here. Background. Yeah, so if you hover it like this, for example, background, you'll see this background is defined by like this whole bunch of things. And if it has this animatable, and it should work. And I will probably work to add some other stuff, but at this point, this is how it is. Like, I think the blur may not work because it's only a number. Other things like rotation. I don't know, this color might not work. Basically, yeah, like left and top and stuff. Okay. So rotation. And let's say if we want to add something to make it, like right now, it actually still moves along the page, right? So if we want to somehow move it at a different speed compared to other stuff, so we can add this guy. If we go back to the code, for example, over here, line number 10, you see this is an array, right? Array of objects. We can add multiple things, of course. That's that's why I made it an array. So it's 90, for example. Call it purple. Because the color is purple. Okay, purple, and its operation is like it's another thing called speed y. And let's say if it's 0.5. Over here, we're going to add another override, line number 26. With purple. Okay. Purple. I'll add a code override to this purple. Go back to scrolling. You see, it kind of move a bit faster than the grid underneath, right? So that what we that's why I put 0.5 is the name of it over here. Sorry, over here. This we look at this code, line number 11, 0.5 is the speed. It's a speed relative to the scrolling content. So if it's bigger than 0, it means that it's gonna move faster than the rest of the object in the scrolling direction. And of course, if it's let's say -2, and yeah, so it scrolls down. This is why I actually kind of here. So I changed the range starting from 0 to 800, right? So now it moves them a little bit better. So if it's -2, it moves down, and if it's like 0, guess what's going to be? It's going to move along with the page. And what else? What else we can try? -1. Let's see what that means. Gonna stick with the rest. Gets locked into its place. Into its place. So really, that's how you can move things around. Like use this hopefully simple syntax. Again, this it always starts like this. The first parameter is the range. The second parameter is a custom scrolling behavior that you want it to be inside this scrolling range. And then followed by this operation is an array, and you can put a list of objects here to specify what kind of operation, what kind of a custom behavior that you want to attach to the item which has this ID. And this ID is really like you can use any kind of things here. Is because that you can if you use a sticker, you can put a sticker right here. And if you use purple, you can use a purple here. Like if you use something else, you're gonna get an error. I think it's not gonna show error here, but there'll be an error in the console. Yeah, right here. So it says that purple. I don't know if you can read the text, but it actually says overrides.purple2 is not a function. So if you see that, it means you probably made a typo or something here. And when you save, and it should refresh. Okay. All right. So that's some simple stuff, right? And what about the real one that I promised? But before I do that, do you actually already know how it works? So it's the same story, right? When I scroll up, this phone it actually moves at a different speed than the rest of the page. So that's why you see this phone actually coming out very quickly and move it to the top, right? And you can also see that this scaling effect. It's the scale, right? You can do the modulate for the scale. And this animation is actually a little bit different. It's not modulate opacity. I'll show you very quickly later. And also for this this kind of dimming effect, I did a trick over here. Actually, there is a frame. It has 2 frames, and one frame is this color at 48% transparency, and this one is 100% transparency. And the whole thing is called a blocker, and it has some kind of transparency here. And what we need to do to make that kind of dimming effect is basically do the modulate to this blocker frame, right? So that's not a big deal. And let me show you the code. This is the code, and I believe it's already familiar to you. And from position 2 to 200, it's modulate, right? No surprise. And this iPhone R is actually this guy. It moves very fast, like moves like at a speed of 2. And if we keep scrolling, we'll see this modulate. And by the way, the number doesn't like this range does not have to be in like kind of increasingly in this order. So we can do any order that we want. But of course, to make it make the code easier to read, we probably just keep it like a kind of increasing order here. So from 300 to you see there's a little interaction between this range and this range. And that's why you can see when it's still moving, it actually kind of shrinking and do this zooming out stuff, right? So yeah, we change its scale from 1.5 to 1. And if keep scrolling, and it actually lock it into the place. And again, there's some interaction between, intersection, not interaction, intersection between this range and this range. And that's why you can see it actually kind of lock in its place, and it keeps zooming out, and keeps zooming out, right? So that's the thing. And this phone name size is the one on the left. This guy. I kind of make it sticky over here, and this parameter, I'm not actually 100% sure that I'm gonna keep it or not. But at this point, this guy is basically, its default position when we make it sticky. So if we don't have that, it's gonna be moved somewhere else. And I just found this seems to be handy, so that I can keep this stuff. Let's say if we're doing this static design at this first, and we can just kind of lay out everything like this way, and do not have to worry about its scrolling position or whatever. We can just put it anywhere, and put it where anywhere that makes sense when we are doing the visual static design, and we can see everything in one place. And then we can move it around in the code like this. So I'll just put a number, 850. Yeah. Let's keep going. Right, and something weird happened. Okay, and I mentioned that this animation is a little different in that it actually it's not. I was not doing it with the modulate. It's just a standard animation. Whenever I scroll into this range, it'll just start the animation. Right, it'll just start the animation. And when I scroll out of this range, like not out of this range, when I scroll up, it's gonna start the animation. And when I scroll down, yeah, sorry, I keep making mistakes. Actually, when I scrolling up, when I scrolling up, and I'll just show this animation to make it appear. And when I scroll down, it just do the reverse. The code here is like, instead of calling some kind of predefined thing here, we can use this like kind of custom function. It's just any kind of, you can run any function. So in this case, it's gonna just do this animate ease for this data, right? And of course, this Vy is the velocity in the right direction. If it's bigger than 0, it's scrolling up. Otherwise, it's scrolling down. And that's why you can see different animations depending on the direction of the scrolling. And of course, like when I use this data opacity, I will have a override that actually use this one. So this one, this phone name size is associated with this label here. And I'm gonna talk about this one a bit later when I finish. We're almost done here. And of course, for this guy, you see, you know what we can do here, right? So it's just modulate of the opacity, and actually all this 5 labels, it's put in a parent frame, and I use this modulate. This is kind of a little trick, and just move it to a specific place when we are doing this scrolling. All right, so that's this iPhone XR example. It's hopefully it's easy to understand, right? Let me actually kind of try to explain how it works. Yeah, actually, before that, I have a few more example I want to show you. So over here, this sticky headers. I think I've been kind of tweeting it for a while, and you can guess how it is implemented, right? Quickly show you the code, and you'll see that you're absolutely correct. So it's just some range and make it sticky. That's easy peasy, right? And the next one is a little bit different. It's SVG tracing stuff. So when I scroll up, you see this, as if we are actually drawing it by line. And then when it moves to a specific place and its real image starts to appear, we can see a lot of like similar effects like this. The reason I said it's kind of different is that to do this line drawing stuff, we need some kind of special code. But in general, let me show you the code override first. So the code override, first of all, actually this is not necessary. First of all, like line 23, it's opacity of that image. So that's not a big deal. And this one is a little bit involving, if I say. It actually set this trace progress according to the Y position of the scrolling. So, of course, there's a little bit of math over here. It's just, make sure it actually falls in the range between 0 and 100. So that means over here, line 27 and 30, it actually override a prop called progress based on this data trace progress. So which like for the value of this guy depends on the scroll position. And if that's not super clear, and I will show you the actual thing. And let me hide this image. And now we have only this line drawing, right? And this line drawing, it has a prop. And this is actually the why it worked that way, because we're setting its progress from 0 to 100. And this line drawing stuff is code component. Is a code component, and I will probably not talk about the detail of how to make this line drawing stuff. But the idea, the key idea here is that this is the SVG. You have 4 paths that stands for the outer edge of the iPad, and the inner edge, and this big circle, the home button, and the camera, right? So each like one path for each of the segment over here. And for that, we have we use this stroke dash array and stroke dash offset. So when the stroke dash array, we can specify a number there, and when that number equals the total length of that path, and then when we're setting its offset, we're going to see this line drawing stuff. And of course, we have some more code, to make this drawing, kind of staggered. It's not starting all at the same time. So this first, and then the inner one, and then those two circles. But we can probably dive into that in a later webinar about how to do this kind of thing. But the focus of this webinar is about scroll interaction, and the key for that to work is if I go back to this guy, is this line of code, right? Line 18. So we're setting the trace progress according to the scroll Y position. And we, at the same time, we actually, override this progress for the code component based on the value we get from this data.trace progress. All right. So one more example. Snapping. What's that? Like if we have 4 pages, so it actually basically works as a page component, except that we can do some more custom stuff, based on the range as well. So if you scroll past the like half mark of that page, it's going to automatically snap in the second page into place, so on and so forth. Yeah, like that. And how does that work? There's a new function here. It's snap Y. And if you do that, it'll try to snap to this range. Okay, so are you guys ready to actually learn about the stuff under the hood, how it actually works? So that's really my habit. Like, when I run into something, I really want to understand, how it actually works. And that way you can really kind of master the tool and let it do whatever you want, or kind of understand what kind of a thing that you cannot do it, right? So if we look at this guy, so basically everything is going to be just a code override, right? And I will have a question to ask you, like this is the function, right? What kind of a thing it's going to return? So if it's code override, it's going to return an object, right? So for this guy, it's going to actually, like, after this finishes, it's going to return. It's going to be like, it's going to return something that actually override the behavior of this scroll. So it's going to be on move. And it'll do something, right? It'll do something based on whatever we specified here. So if it's a snappy, we're gonna just execute the code that is required by this snap Y. And if it's sticky, and we'll do something else, right? But the key thing is here that it's gonna return an object that's gonna override some of the properties of either the scroll, or if we actually look at this iPhone, like for example for this blocker, and line number is 63, and we have over here like line 15, right? We have this modulate opacity. So for this override, line 63, right? So this guy, it's going to return an object like that, opacity, something like data, whatever except that everything is internal. It's automatically handled by the library, by the Parallax library, right? So the point of this that I wanted to show you this is that this is not really magic. This is just something that actually returns an object, and once you know that, you're gonna understand why, like this line from line 65 to 68, why we were able to do that. Because like this is a kind of like a object spread, if you're not familiar. So basically, we can create a new object out of an existing object with this like 3 dot. That means it's gonna copy everything from this object, and we can add some more stuff. And this means that, like, because the return value of this function is an object, so we can do this 3 dot in front of it, and then we can, do further customization. For example, that phone name size or like opacity, we want to override its opacity so that we can we can do this animation here, line 42 to 44. Yeah, so that's kind of roughly how it works. So of course, according to different things, different like functions that we write here, we can make it override. We can return a different object based on what we specify in the function in at the top. All right. So actually, one more example. This guy, scroll away header. This is again very standard interaction, and when I scroll, it just hides the header. But at any point, if I scroll down, it's gonna just show the header. How it's working? Go to the code, and this time it's kind of different from what we have here. So the reason that I want to show you this is that we can actually build any kind of a custom scroll interaction out of the basic building blocks that we've seen at this point. So this scroll away header is just an example of how it works. So it's going to return an array, and we kind of destructure it into 2 things, and one assign it to the scroll, and the other assign it to the header. But if you check the implementation of this scroll header, by the way, I'm holding the command key and click, and it becomes a link. And if you click into it, you'll see the implementation. It looks familiar, right? So it's scroll overrides. It's what we did, for the past an hour, like 50 minutes. This is a range, and this is a custom behavior that we want to do. So if it's moving down, we're gonna set the header to 0, and otherwise we'll do another one to set the header. Cool. Yeah, that should conclude my webinar, and I have a few slides to show you. Yeah, so I'll give you this Parallax module or component or whatever, and it has 2 modes. Don't forget, it still has a no code mode. You can drag and drop and make some simple interactions. And there's a code override, which of course adds a whole lot more possibility, and it's still in beta or maybe alpha. I don't know how to call it, but basically it's not like, feel free to play with it. But the syntax over there, it might change, or I will try my best to kind of preserve the existing behavior. But hopefully it won't be too difficult to change in the future. And future work, and probably want to add a horizontal scroll. And right now it's just all about vertical scroll. It's y and vy, which is a velocity in the y direction. And this one, this kind of interesting, like variable ranges. is like how mention that. Like at this point, all the ranges, it's specified hard-coded number. And maybe I'll see. I'm not sure if it's actually quite possible yet, but I'll try to just make the range, like you can specify, like for this particular frame or another image, or whatever, I want to make it sticky for its height, like based on its height or its original position, or something like that. So that's something I'm thinking about to kind of work on in the future. And also, it's all cool that we can a prototype this kind of interaction, but it will be not cool if the developer has to implement from scratch again. So I will be investigating how to make this like we can directly kind of copy and paste, at least for that kind of the scroll, the stuff that inside the scroll overrides. Those are like a specification of the scrolling interaction that we want to do. And I wanted to explore the way to make it easy to transition that into the actual development, so into production apps. All right, so that's your turn. Make something, like share with me on Twitter or email me. I will really look forward to see what you're gonna create. And a couple more, of course, bonus, 50% off of all my courses, and expire in a week. And I think I have another one. Oh yeah, so for the next webinar, I will try to kind of take a poll of what we want to see, and I'll create a poll on Twitter, and I'll send you the link afterwards, and I'll send you a link to this video as well, so that you can look at later. Yeah, so 4 minutes, but to 11 o'clock, so it seems like it's not bad. Like timing is not bad. All right, thank you. Thanks a lot for sticking around with me, and I hope you find it useful.